It was Easter Sunday, so Mom had put us to bed later than usual, when suddenly the familiar sound of Mike Barrett's fists thundered against the back door. That's how my life starts out. I was 3 years old, and that night was the first of years-long abuse where this serial predator in town got into our house and beat my mother in front of his children for like 10 hours straight. Nearly killed her. I did not understand why until I went through it and understood that when someone has that kind of predatorial nature, that kind of violence, that kind of sadism, and they are targeting you, that you learn to cooperate in order to protect yourself.
Unsolicited Perspectives podcast. Episode clip.
All right. Well, with every interview, I start off with a very, very important question. Let's go back to the beginning. Tell me a little bit about your upbringing, your family life, where you're from. Give me the deep.
Ooh, wow. I've never done this before, but I'm going to do it.
Okay.
You're about to hear the opening sentence of the very beginning.
Okay.
It was Easter Sunday. This chapter is called Prologue 1984. It was Easter Sunday, so Mom had put us to bed later than usual, when suddenly the familiar sound of Mike Barrett's fists thundered against the back door. That's how my life starts out. I was 3 years old, and that night was the first of years-long abuse where this serial predator in town got into our house and beat and raped my mother in front of us children for like 10 hours straight. Nearly killed her. And what I say at the beginning of my book is that this book is my attempt to do what I couldn't at 3 years old. Climb out the window and go get help. So we were on the second story, I was, and my sister was. And, you know, you're hearing your mother scream, jump out the window, jump off the roof, go get help. You know, jump off the balcony, go get help. And, you know, when you're 3 years old, you're like, that's a long fall. And by the time I get there, what if he kills me? That metaphor carried through in a way that I never foresaw in higher education. When I encountered a sociopathic professor that was cyber stalking me, had physically assaulted me, had sexually assaulted me, and was threatening me personally, professionally, and threatening my family. And it worked out to be a coercive relationship that went on for at least 6 years, that then derailed my entire career and derailed my life. I fled my field. I fled states. I fled homes. I was on the run. And I found myself in exactly the same shoes that my mother was, actually, but far less severe from the physical violence standpoint. And so that is kind of what kickstarted all this. I ended up leaving higher ed entirely in 2023 for so many reasons, but I'd say the majority of the reason was that the violence that I thought that I was escaping through higher ed never went away. It just continued in higher ed. And I tried so many different institutions. It happened when I was a student. It happened when I was a staff member. It happened when I was a grad student, undergrad, PhD student, all the things. And it was always systemic gender-based violence and racism. And, you know, when you think about the fact that higher education was founded by a bunch of white people, specifically white men for white men, it makes a lot of sense that, you know, just because they open the doors doesn't mean that it's safe, right? Yeah. Now, not everybody has an experience as severe as mine, but I think that's why I became so activated to speak out. There came a point for me when, you know, if you've been running your entire life, running for your life, your entire life, and there's never anywhere safe, at what point do you stop? I really want to say the F word, running. You know, at what point do you stop running? Like, at what point do you say enough? Like, now you're going to run because I'm going to speak out about what you did.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been doing ever since through a variety of channels. Yeah.
First off, I want to say thank you for sharing that very, very personal and emotional experience at such a young age. I know it's written in your book, to still have to relive that every time that you talk about that.
Yeah.
Just thank you for letting me and the audience in to that story with you, and take this emotional journey with you, because that has to have been a very difficult situation to navigate through as you and your sister were growing up with your mom,
Yeah.
knowing that your mom had experienced that, and growing up in that household. I want to take a brief second to examine that. From that incident, how did that bring you guys closer together, or because of the pain push you further apart?
You know what's up. You know what's up. Yeah. Oh, we were all divided. It
Mm-hmm.
just led to complete chaos in the home. And I mean, as an adult, I have all sorts of theories about why that is.
Mm-hmm.
Most of those are not included in my book, but I mean, you asked, and I said you can ask the hard-hitting questions and I'll answer
Mm-hmm.
them. This is my answer. My mother, unfortunately, was very mentally ill, and after the violence became even more mentally ill and herself violent. And she
Mm.
wasn't that way before all of that. And, but that's what traumatic brain injury can do, right? And
Yeah.
undiagnosed traumatic brain injury as well, I believe. But anyway, so the thing was, when you looked at the dynamic of what was happening when Mike Barrett was uh, invading our home, my older sister was the one who covered. She was the one who, agreed with my mother, you won't tell your grandfather, you know, and
Mm.
covered for my mother. I was the one because I was too little. I mean, in this early scene where you see what's happening there with Mike Barrett in 1984, my mom, so how he ended up getting in was saying that it was Easter and he and his mom had made Easter baskets for us, for the kids.
Mm.
And we were really poor. So my mom, she's never stated this, was probably like, okay, well, the kids want Easter baskets, you can come in.
Mm-hmm.
And even before she even opened the door, I was praying that she wouldn't open the door. I already knew at 3 years old, this is bad. This is very, very bad. And
Mm-hmm.
I knew that, and my mom didn't. So I, as a child, judged her. I mean, I resented her for letting him in. Why aren't you protecting us? Why aren't you standing up for yourself? Why don't you hit him back? And I did not understand why until I went through it
Mm-hmm.
and understood that when someone has that kind of predatorial nature, that kind of violence, that kind of sadism, and they are targeting you, you learn to cooperate in order to protect yourself. So once I was in my 30s and I went through all this, my mother and I reconciled. It was
Mm-hmm.
a lot of years before we were it was actually only a couple of years before she died that we were totally good.
Mm-hmm.
But that set up that early dynamic of okay, well, the oldest one is covering. The youngest one won't shut up. The middle child at that point, won't keep her mouth shut about why it's wrong and is, and then the baby of the family, my little brother, was actually physically in the room witnessing it and being forced to cooperate. So, if you're the mother in that situation, the oldest one covered, the youngest one is probably going to be messed up for the rest of their life. It is absolutely messed up, right?
Mm-hmm.
The middle one is the one that's judging you, right?
Mm.
I definitely was the family scapegoat. I was definitely the one that the siblings ganged up on, and so my load was one of much, isolation and just bullying in the house, abuse in the house,
Mm.
then abuse in the community, bullying in the community, violence from the community, and you'd never know it from looking at my face. I always joke that I have like a doll bitch face. It's doll bitch on the front and it's Chucky bitch in the back. I'm just like there, you do not know what is hiding behind this face. There's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of scary shit back there.
Mm-hmm.
And so Yeah, the siblings and I, no contact with one of them, minimal contact with another, and that's pretty much about it. We've tried here and there over the years, but you can imagine the demons that are in the room with us every time we're together. It's just like you're
Yeah.
together, this is what you think of. So it's just too painful to even be around each other.
I have
Yeah.
two more personal questions, and then we're going to get into your work.
Let's have it.
All right. The first question is, you said your grandfather, but you didn't say anything about your father.
Again, you know what's up. Yeah. Dad was okay. So, how do I summarize my father? My father, at this point in time, was in the military, specifically Navy SEAL Team 6. So,
Okay.
Black Ops and PSYOPs.
Yeah.
And he was training these guys in hand to hand combat. My dad, my mom, here, a shout out to my dad. My mom used to call him the White Warlock. Or actually, she said that he was called the White Warlock by people in town
Mm,
because he would go and pick a fight and leave a dozen bodies on the ground
mm,
and just be gone. Now, there's a reason for that. That's the intergenerational family violence. Military
mm,
runs in the family. You can take a guess. I probably can't say much more than that for
mm-hmm,
risk of, outing other people's secrets. But
mm-hmm,
I can tell you this, there's a lot of intergenerational violence. And my dad learned at a very early age, in his own words, if this is how it's going to be, then I'm going to be the biggest, baddest mother on the block.
mm-hmm,
And he was. And I would now, as an adult, knowing what I know from both my mom and my dad, I would say that their relationship wasn't fully consensual.
mm,
And so they got divorced and he took off in the military and did his thing, but he did try to stay in our lives to some degree, wasn't financially there. Blamed that on my mother's drug abuse and stuff like that. But once I was old enough, we repaired that. And he was
okay.
there in the ways that he could be. And now he's like he's my rock. And he's been my
Good.
rock for a long, long time. So that is that. That's my dad.
Oh, I've got so many more questions,
Yeah.
but the final one,
Hmm.
and this is going to lead into your work. You said that there's still conflict between you and your siblings.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, y'all all went through something very traumatic,
Yeah.
but also
Yeah.
you're very accomplished. Are the
Right.
other siblings as accomplished
You're
as
you
you are?
are
Because you
too
said
good
you.
at your job. You're good at your job, Bruce. Oh my
Thank you. I
God.
appreciate it.
Look at me. I'm
Uh,
adjusting my shirt. I'm like, God, he knows everything.
well, because you bring it up that you came from a lower economic background, and
Yeah.
just the way this country is set up, it makes it
Yep.
extremely difficult for people from a lower economic background to even to get to college, to get accepted to college, and then go to college because
Yeah.
college is so expensive. And we're the same age. And when I went to the University of Maryland, living in state, it was $12,000 a
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
Now it's something like 25,000 a semester. I don't know what the last numbers were, but even
Yeah.
12,000 a year living in state in 1998 was a lot of money.
That's a
So I
lot.
asked that
Yeah.
question because you're accomplished,
Yeah.
author, website, helping people,
Yeah.
uh, master's degrees. What about your siblings? And could that, if they're not as accomplished, could that lead to jealousy and also the continued reason why there's distance between the three of you?
I absolutely believe so, more so from my sister than my brother.
Hmm.
My brother, I think he went and joined the military too and served in Iraq, came back, got married, had 5 kids, stayed in his hometown, and did well for himself that way. But I also think because he never got out of the hometown really, except for his tour in Iraq and a brief stay in California and Oregon with dad,
Hmm.
I think that he feels more of a need to be recognized and kind of achieve things in ways that he can share, you know.
Hmm.
And I love that about him. I'm always just like, thank you for your service. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
doing great. You're a so much better father than what we had, and I love that. My older sister, I think, absolutely harbors unfortunate jealousy toward me. I really do. But this is interesting because when we were growing up, she was the star. She was the star athlete. She was the most talented. She was the most popular. Boys were crazy about her. And I was just this little shadow following her around, kind of annoying her. So I think that when those tables turned, what happened with her is that she actually, and again, I thank her for her service. She joined the Air Force
Mm-hmm.
and she was in honor flight, which is like the best group in the Air Force. And she was also an environmental engineer, which means she worked on the planes, which was like the hardest thing to get into. So she was smart,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I'm not going to share what happened to her, but I will say that she did end up getting, you know, diagnosed with some things
Mm-hmm.
that led to an inability to continue pursuing that career or any career.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do think that it's hard for her, to see me make it out in a way that she did not.
Mm-hmm.
And that hurts me, because I hurt for her. No matter how she treats me, no matter how bad it is, I still hurt for her. And I still hurt for me for grieving that relationship with a sister that I wish I had.
Join the conversation and follow the Unsolicited Perspectives podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your audio podcasts.